This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. If you haven't heard, there's a story out there about a group of people who went to Donald Trump's rally in Arizona who have been very sick since they went to that rally. They actually had been hospitalized with bizarre eye-burning symptoms. And the reason I'm covering this story is because as we watch what's going on in the world, as we watch these false flags and these psyops that the government's creating, there's going to be psyops and false flags created around actual civilians attacking other civilians based on their political beliefs. This is going to end in some type of civil unrest, and the government is hell-bent on creating that. So when we think about some of the stuff that we've seen over the years, we've seen protests, staged protests outside of democratic events. We've seen obviously the government created Capitol riot that occurred. But what we're gonna see are frightening things like this. And this has a narrative and a theme behind it. The reason I'm telling you this is that they're giving and suggesting that possibly the people who went to this rally were poisoned, potentially with something along the lines of anthrax, or something could have been sprayed onto them while they were there as a political attack for them being Trump supporters. And this is going to end up going this specific route. This is not just going to be about Trump getting attacked by Democratic civilians. That's the narrative that's out there now, right? Unhinged liberals going after Donald Trump, unhinged Republicans refusing to believe in what they're being told about who's winning the elections, going after their political opponents. It's going to end with civilian versus civilian. And there's an underlying theme in what I'm about to play for you. The underlying theme here is somebody like Howard Stern talking to his audience and telling his audience that he doesn't hate Donald Trump. Well, of course he's going to say he doesn't hate Donald Trump, because it's pretty hard for Howard Stern to say that he hates Donald Trump when Donald Trump is probably or has probably been on his show hundreds of times over the years. And obviously, all of these people, we have seen a connection between Trump and every one of these people out there who claims to hate Donald Trump all of a sudden, right? Oprah Winfrey and Donald Trump were best buddies forever. Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, best buddies forever. Now, of course, well, Donald Trump has changed, we're told, right? So Donald Trump isn't one of them anymore. He's one of us, right? He's one of the people. And of course, this goes back to Albert Pike. When the people need a hero, we will supply that hero. And that's the role that Trump is playing. But Howard Stern is talking about how he doesn't hate Trump. He just hates Trump supporters and people who go and vote for Trump. He hates them. They are stupid. This is the narrative that they're going to start pushing now. It's not like they haven't been pushing it, but really we haven't seen a lot of false flags or psyops yet directed where a civilian attacks another civilian just based on a t-shirt they might be wearing that has the other political party on it or affiliation on it, right? Like we've heard stories in the past about people at sporting events attacking somebody else who's rooting for the other team. Well, this is what we're going to start to see now. We're going to start to see false flags and psyops around unhinged civilians going after other civilians because they're so engaged in this political psychosis that's happening. Here is the story about people being blinded at this Trump event, Trump, of course, looking into it, and them trying to figure out what it is. And they're pretty much telling you in this news story what it is. They're suggesting that these people may have been attacked from the opposite political party. And they even chime in with Howard Stern's quote about how he just hates Trump supporters. He doesn't even hate Trump himself. That's where this is headed.
It's an alarming medical mystery for Trump rally spectators. These MAGA faithful were right behind Trump at last week's rally in Tucson, and now they say their eyes began burning right after the event was over.
It hurt a lot. I couldn't open my eyes.
Myra Rodriguez was in the high-profile front row of the VIP section right behind Trump. She shook Trump's hand as he arrived, and after his speech, danced along with him to his favorite Village People song, YMCA. She had a blast, but as she drove home, she says her eyes began to burn.
And I'm like, something's wrong. My eyes hurt a lot and I just have a really bad headache.
She went to the ER and shared the medical record with us. Sudden extreme eye pain while attending a political rally. A doctor wrote on her chart. Severe allergic reaction diagnosed. Did you feel anything spray your eye during the rally?
Not at all.
Maya says all the folks on her side of the stage, 20 in total, told her their eyes burned.
I couldn't see normal.
Frances Moreno and her husband, Pastor Eli Moreno, were standing right behind Myra. They also went to the ER. What do the doctors think happened to you guys?
The ophthalmologist told us on the next day that it could have been either some type of lighting or chemical.
You don't have any proof it was nefarious, right? You didn't see anything, you didn't smell anything, you didn't see anything get sprayed.
No, but we felt the pain.
We're looking into it, says a spokesman for the Trump campaign. Meanwhile, a feud is erupting between Trump and Howard Stern. Trump was once a frequent guest on Stern's radio show back before he entered politics. But how times have changed. Stern had this to say on his Sirius satellite radio show this week.
I don't hate the guy. I hate the people who vote for him. I think they're stupid.
Last night, Trump fired back on Greg Gutfeld's Fox News talk show.
I was on Howard Stern's show as much as anybody, and he was great at that time. And then he went woke.
Yeah.
And since he's gone woke, his ratings have gone down the tubes.
So for now, they're saying it could be something along the lines of an allergic reaction, which really doesn't make too much sense, being that some media outlets were reporting that over 20 people who attended the rally ended up in a hospital with the same exact symptoms. So the number that they're saying is that 20 people, according to Arizona Globe journalist Christy Kelly, has reported a troubling development following Trump's rally that 20 people were affected by symptoms of blindness, blurred vision, and burning. Many supporters who were seated behind Trump on stage went to the ER after the rally. So then it gives a specific target here in this article. Supporters from the Latinos for Trump group were among the most severely impacted, including Pastor L. Moreno and his wife, Francesca. Pastor Moreno described mild discomfort, but his wife's symptoms were far worse. Her vision blurred, her face swelled up, and we had to rush to the nearest Walgreens for help. Miss Moreno's symptoms persisted for several days, and despite treatment in the ER, she has been referred to a doctor for potential treatment and further care. So, very interesting too. I mean, they rushed to their nearest Walgreens, so it almost sounds like a planted story. Who in the world, if you're feeling sick while you're driving, who's running to Walgreens? Who's running to CVS? Have you ever been inside these places? You think there's an actual person that understands what would even be happening anyway? Not that doctors this day and age really have that much of a clue. They're just following protocol. But these types of stories too are going to be planted out there to start planting seeds in people's heads. And Latinos for Trump is a specific narrative we'll have to keep an eye on too, because they could say that they targeted Latinos for Trump, maybe even Democrat Latinos targeted conservative Latinos, that type of thing. Because remember, this civil war is going to, the same way we see denominations in the church, right? Where there's this group versus, where work salvation versus faith-based, and they go back and forth, and there's always just like this watering down of people that should be united in their faith. Well, the same thing occurs, and it needs to occur in something like a civil war. In Albert Pike's blueprint, you could break this thing down into, conservative Latinos versus Democrat Latinos, black conservatives versus black Democrats. They're going to break this thing down into as many levels as they possibly can. So another attendee who is a Planned Parenthood whistleblower named Maria Rodriguez shared a similar experience, explaining that just 30 minutes after leaving the rally, she was unable to open her eyes due to extreme burning. When I got to the hospital, they told me I had a chemical burn. Days later, I'm still dealing with blurry vision and sensitivity to light. In an interview with News 4 Tuscan, Rodriguez described her visit to the ER, where medical staff asked if she had been sprayed with something based on her unusual symptoms. The emergency room staff, from the triage nurse to the PA, asked, "Are you sure you didn't get sprayed with something? Your symptoms look like you got sprayed with something." I can't see anything. When I try to open my eyes, I see a bright light. It hurts. It hurts a lot to open my eyes. I have this cold cloth I put on and take off constantly. It's horrible. So what do we take from that? Pushing. Something was sprayed onto you. Something was sprayed onto these specific people who all specifically happen to be Latino, right? How about the fact that she is a quote unquote whistleblower for Planned Parenthood? Think about how we could see a lot of false flag attacks also based on those things, just political ideologies, right? Just targeting somebody who's pro-life versus pro. And that's what they're doing. They're creating this psychosis psychologically. Now, a story like this may be fully manufactured and fake, but when people hear this story, they start thinking to themselves automatically, right? What do you think a MAGA conservative Republican is thinking when they hear this? They're saying to themselves, did they spray anthrax? Are they using a chemical weapon against us? Well, we better stay, ready to go here. And maybe they'll hear a story soon about a Democratic convention where people left with some type of symptoms, maybe something else, maybe rashes or hives all over their body. And when it goes back and forth and the media uses the psychosis to plant seeds in each side, then all of a sudden these people stop staring at the other political party and start staring at the civilians who support that political party. And that's really how you breed civil war. And that's what they're doing. And again, I'm not saying that people are going to be running in the streets with cannons and swords, like all the visuals we all know when we hear the term civil war. But you don't think for a second if they start creating violent events out in the public where they stage these rallies and then they have false flags inside of the rallies, that the more they do it, the more seeds will be planted where people just continue to say, I can't live among these people? Again, remember all the stuff with the Supreme Court I've covered over the last couple of years, deliberately being done so that there's different laws in different states, different rules in different states, where they make it where you might say, well, I'm not going to move because of something like this. I'm not going to move. I'm 50 years old. Why would I move over Roe v. Wade? Right? Well, maybe you'll move if you're 50 years old and the government tells you you have to put something in your body again. And now you're even more skeptical than you were the first time. And you say, I'm not putting something in my body. And they say, well, you can't have a job or a bank account. You can't use our bank and you can't go to our grocery store. Then you might say, you know what? These people are nuts. I got to move to a red state. And I believe that's where this is headed. I believe it's headed in red and blue states. I do not believe that this day and age that the government, even using psychosis and, putting people into a psychosis, using hypnotism like they use, I don't think that they can actually get people to violence. So these events that we'll see, which potentially could be violent events at rallies, etc., will all be false flag events. But if they get people sucked into the psychosis, they don't need to actually be involved in an event where they go, we're going to go and we're going to do this. It really just leads towards them saying, look, we can't live with these people anymore. It's too much. It's too much. And the government will. I believe that's the next wave of things that we're going to start seeing, right? And potentially, if you factor in a false flag final act assassination on Trump, which I believe could potentially be coming, that could be the what they call it, the coup de grace. I mean, that could be the big thing, right? That could be the thing that causes the civilians, because now they lose the supposed leader that was going to save them. Now they have to take matters into their own hands, right? Because they're not going to support someone like J.D. Vance the way they support Trump. They'll be completely unhinged, right? They'll be completely unhinged, and it'll be a manufactured type of revolution that could occur if they end up going down that road. Now, I don't know what the plan is. I'm not on the inside, obviously. If I was on the inside, I'd be telling you to go vote MAGA, go vote Republican, and I wouldn't have lost over 80 channels at this point. I wouldn't have lost a massive subscriber base that I could have woken up to the left-right divide among many of the other agendas going on right now, like the digital ID and all the other crap that they're trying to push. So I don't know what the plan actually is. All I can do is look at this stuff and look at the underlying theme, right? When you see an article like this come out and you say 20 people poisoned, well, who would do the poisoning, right? Well, the first thing everybody's thinking is, oh my gosh, it must have been Democrats, right? But then they say, well, it's specifically Latinos, right? So they have them all grouped together. Then they say specifically Latinos for Trump were attacked. And then somebody else says, well, I was a whistleblower for Planned Parenthood. Then you start connecting the dots and you see how they're targeting this psychologically and they're seed planting in people. And then, of course, as you heard in that clip, which is very important for people to pay attention to, is exactly what someone like Howard Stern is saying, because you could probably bet any amount of money. I mean, literally any amount. I'd say it's a deadlock bet to say that Donald Trump is still currently friends with Howard Stern, because I believe all these people are still friends with one another, that these people are all chummy with one another. I don't think you're friends your entire life, and then all of a sudden you run for president, you would think that all these people would support their friend, right? Because they're friends, so they probably have the same ideologies, right? Or some of the things wouldn't even matter in the first place because they're friends, right? But then they run for president, and then every single person in Hollywood, every single political person who Trump supported financially or was friends with, like the Clintons, all of a sudden says he's the worst thing in the history of the world. They don't just go out there and say, yeah, well, I was friends with Trump, but I don't think he'd make a good president. No, they go out there and they tell you he's the worst human being that's ever lived. He's going to end democracy. So what were you friends with him for in the first place? What was Oprah friends with him for? Why was Howard friends with him? Because they are all friends. This is psychological. This is a game that they're playing on your mind, right? So Howard comes out and says, well, I don't hate Trump that much, even though he spent years and years and years bashing Trump, which is done by design. He comes out and says, I hate his followers. I hate people who go to the ballots, the fake voting machines, and vote for him. And what is that telling the audience out there? They're going, yeah, you know what? I hate Trump supporters more than I hate Trump too. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And that's exactly what they've done, because it has worked. We see this working in today's society, don't we? Yes, we do. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. Let me know what you think in the comment section. God bless all of you as always and your families.